number one source, Sports Card Nation. The hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 313 of the Sports Card Nation podcast. Glad to be back as always. For those that might not know, we are released episodes every Friday, 30 to 40 minutes long, interview guests each and every Friday. Generally, we break them up into part one and part two, just to make it a more consumable length. This is our 6th year of existence. Once a week, 300 something episodes. You can figure it out, but crazy to think, and really humbled and honored to be downloaded as much as we are, and you know, get the feedback that we do. So we're back again today, obviously, and great guest. I say that every week, but I believe it every week. And this week's great guest is Sal Berry of Puck Junk. He's a podcaster. Has actually been doing it longer than even I have, and I'm an OG, as they like to tell me. He's a writer. He's a collector. He's a hockey fan, and he's really a vast knowledge, vast resource of hockey knowledge. And when it comes to hobby, off the ice, on the ice, and glad to have him on. And I think you'll enjoy this week's episode. So without any further ado, let's hear from one of our great sponsors, and right after that, we'll be talking with Sal Berry.
Hobby News Daily is your homepage of the hobby, providing original writing, exclusive gem rate data, a daily morning minute podcast, and some of the best content creators in the hobby. Remember, hobbynewsdaily.com and at Hobby News Daily on social. Happy collecting!
Happy to talk to my next guest on the Sports Card Shop guest line. We have some similar things. He's a dealer like myself, collector, podcaster. So we check all the same boxes there. And we're going to talk about a sport I love, but I don't think we talk enough about on the show. So glad to chop that up with him today. That would be hockey. Mr. Sal Berry of Puck Junk Podcast. That's easier to read than to say.
Hi, glad to be here. All
right, so we'll kind of start off. You're a podcaster yourself, Sal. So I kind of, the first time anyone's on, it's the kind of the standard icebreaker podcast question, if you will, kind of like how it all started for you in getting into the hobby and all that fun stuff.
Well, I started my podcast in 2015. Prior to that, I used to be a weekly guest on an XM radio program called The War Room, which was a hockey talk show. And I was their hockey collectibles expert. And I would come on once a week, talk hockey cards, hockey collectibles, hockey pop culture stuff like hockey movies, anything hockey related like that. And I was a guest on that show, like a recurring guest, for about 5 years. And then it kind of tapered off around 2014. And I said, you know what? I really like talking about cards and collectibles. I like writing about it. That's kind of how I got my start into all of this as a writer. But I also like talking about it. I mean, just a different medium, different way of expressing yourself. So I texted a friend of mine, it was late at night, like midnight or something, a friend that I had always liked meeting up with at card shows, Tim Parrish. And I just randomly texted him like, hey, we should do a podcast. And he's like, right now? I'm like, are you drinking? He's like, yeah. I'm like, no, not now, later, like in the morning or sometimes this week. So we just started the podcast after that, kind of as a byproduct of me being a regular guest on a talk show, and just kind of grew from there.
Yeah, and I've said on this show too, that's kind of how this show got started, Sal. I was kind of doing a Friday morning spot on a local broadcast here in Syracuse, and then my work schedule changed. I wasn't able to appear on that, and I'll make the story a lot shorter than it is. But doing that segment each Friday kind of was the litmus test, like, hey, I can do this, and so I missed it when I wasn't on that program anymore, probably like you did, and I said, hey, I can just, I can do it myself with the audio, and that's how Sports Card Nation podcast was born, and here we are. It's crazy to say, 6 years later, and had no idea how long it would be, or whether people were going to like it, but thankfully that's the case. I'm a Rangers fan. I'm a New York City kid. I'm in Syracuse now. I love hockey. I as much of a baseball and football fan as I am. If you ever been to a live hockey game, I would say it's probably one of the most exciting sports to watch in person. On TV's fine too, which I do, but there's something about a live hockey game. Where are you located? And I guess why hockey? Not that there's anything wrong with hockey, but it's not, here in the state-wise anyway, it's not the most popular sport. So that sort of thing. Whereabouts you located, and how did it start with hockey?
So I'm in Chicago, home of the Chicago Blackhawks and also the Chicago Wolves of the AHL. I know Syracuse has the Syracuse Crunch of the AHL, yep. So also an AHL city that you're in. I'm lucky to have two hockey teams here. I got into hockey in the most random way. We got cable TV a couple of weeks before my 14th birthday, and I was channel surfing, and I stumbled upon a Blackhawks game, like the last 2 minutes of a Blackhawks game. Had really no idea what hockey was because this was in the late 80s. The NHL did not have any national broadcast on free TV. At that time, they were either on ESPN or prior to that, the USA Network. So you had to have cable TV to watch hockey in America in the 80s. Now, if you had a local team, they might broadcast on a local channel. However, the Blackhawks were also on cable and only their road games. So the only way you could have gotten into hockey in the 80s would be to either watch an Olympic hockey game every 4 years or to have cable television. And like I said, it wasn't until we had enough disposable income, my family, for us to afford cable TV. And then I found hockey, and I'm like, oh my God, this is such a cool sport. And then it turns out that both my mother and my aunt were big hockey fans in the 70s, up until about the time the Blackhawks stopped televising their games on free TV. And that's kind of why they stopped being hockey fans. So it actually kind of ran in the family, but just wasn't aware of it until I discovered it in the late 80s. And then, my mom and my aunt were like, oh yeah, hockey. We were fans of that. We used to go to the games in the 70s.
And then as you just started buying cards, is that where like it went from being a fan to collecting? Like, where did that bridge get like kind of crossed?
Well, I had been buying cards for a while, actually. The thing is like, yep. It wasn't necessarily like peer pressure, but it was like, the other boys at your school do something and kind of want to do that too. Fortunately, it wasn't like drugs or alcohol. It was trading cards. So, I remember when the Chicago Cubs in 84 made it to the playoffs, and that was kind of a big deal. And so then I remember in early 85, the boys in my school were collecting baseball cards. And I said, oh, those are kind of cool. I'd seen Cubs games on TV because they were broadcast on WGN. They only did home games during the day because they didn't have lights until 1988. A lot of times the Cubs would preempt the after-school cartoons that I would want to watch. So a lot of times I would just watch the Cubs waiting for Transformers or G.I. Joe to come on. So when kids were collecting baseball cards, I got into that. And then when they started collecting football cards the next year, because then you had the 85 Bears and they won the Super Bowl, and everybody was buying football cards in 86. So then I kind of jumped into that. Then 87, 88, 89, 87, 88, I was just kind of buying some baseball, some football. And I would buy non-sport cards. And in 89, when I got into hockey in early 89, it was just like, oh, I got to find hockey cards because this is a sport that I like. So I didn't really become a passionate card collector until early 89. And that's when I jumped into hockey collecting with both feet and really got into it and was really passionate about it.
At that point, was it like 100% hockey, or did you still sort of like predominantly hockey, but still dabble in some of the other sports, or not necessarily?
Well, the thing was that with like hockey, there weren't a lot of sets. So like,
Yeah.
I remember getting an 89 Topps hockey set at a card store, and then I had it. And I didn't really know what O-Pee-Chee was yet. So I didn't know that there was like a Canadian version of the same set with more cards. So I still bought 89 Topps base summer. I bought a lot of 89 Topps baseball. And then I bought, like non-sports. Like I remember like the Batman trading cards came out and I was all up in that. And like the Ninja Turtles and Gremlins 2 and Ghostbusters 2. So I was kind of a sucker for non-sport cards because, I liked going to the movies as a kid. Who didn't, right? And so I would collect those. But yeah, and then I want to say by like 1990, I don't think I bought any baseball cards. I might have bought a pack here or there just cause, but I didn't really. At that point, I was really just focused on hockey. Other than the random like, oh, these action-packed football cards look pretty cool. Maybe I'll buy a pack. Or, oh, these hoops basketball cards look pretty cool. Maybe I'll buy a pack. Because again, there were not a lot of hockey sets until 1991. So once you had the top set and the O-Pee-Chee set, you were pretty much done collecting for the year.
Yeah, like me, Sal, you grew up with the era where, we had more than one company, making different sports, like you said, around 91, you had the Topps, O-Pee-Chee, then Pro Set got into the game, obviously Upper Deck and other companies. Unlike now, where Upper Deck is the exclusive, licensee for the sport, they do I think you'll agree, they do a pretty terrific job with it. But I do and not just for hockey, but just in general, Sal, I kind of miss multiple companies doing cards. I thought it made it more competitive. Companies were trying to be better than the other company making those cards, and I feel like we sort of lost that. And like I just said, Upper Deck's doing a great job. Do you miss the multiple companies doing hockey cards, or are you more than fine with just, Upper Deck? And I almost now, with the way Fanatics is kind of like they're trying to take over literally everything, I almost hope they don't. I don't want them to have the full 4 major sports, if you know what I mean. So kind of your thoughts on the current landscape of cards in comparison to when there was multiple, produced.
Yeah, and it's interesting because 10 years ago, we had 2 companies making hockey cards. So for those of you who are not all up into hockey so much, the thing is that there were multiple companies making hockey cards until the 04-05 lockout. Then in 05-06, the NHLPA granted an exclusive license for Deck. That was actually investigated internally by the NHLPA, who said, wait a minute, why are we collecting money from one company when we were collecting money from 5 companies? And it turns out there's a little bit of a shady background dealing with the current head of the NHL Players Association at the time. Turns out he was ousted because of that. And then for 4 years, from like 2011 to 2014, there was a co-license with Upper Deck and Panini making hockey cards. And that lasted 4 years. And then in 2014, the NHL and the NHLPA said, you know what, we're just going with one company, and it's Upper Deck. And so personally, I like competition. I like competition because you get some great new ideas. And there was even some innovation going on around that time when you had the 2 companies battling it out. Although, honestly, I feel like Panini failed every chance it got. Like, it just didn't, like, Upper Deck had an idea and Panini had an idea, but Panini's idea was like 80% as good as Upper Deck's idea. I'll give you like one, for instance. When they brought out Donruss, they brought back Donruss hockey cards and they had the rated rookie. And I said, okay, this is going to be the set that challenges Upper Deck Series 1, Upper Deck Series 2, and its iconic Young Gunners, right? Because, you look at like the Young Gun, that's like the iconic Upper Deck rookie card for hockey. And I thought that, okay, Donruss, cool. You know what? And you know what? They made the base set a little bigger. It was 250 cards. So you had a little more incentive to buy more boxes. Whereas with like Upper Deck, you'd buy 2 boxes, you'd have your full base set, and you'd be like, all right, am I going to just buy more boxes and end up with like 5 complete base sets just to get those last 50 Young Guns? So with Donruss, there was a little more reason to buy more boxes. The thing is that they made a Donruss Series 1. They didn't make a Donruss Series 2. And it was just like, okay, great. So you don't have any of the guys who came out later in the season in Series 2. You don't have players in new uniforms. You don't have rookies who made their debut. They did have a couple of rookies from like a rookie photo shoot, but it was just not, like I said, it was poorly executed. Upper Deck had the Cup, which was their premium product. And then Panini responded with Dominion, but I think they only did it for 1 year. And okay, you need a little more than that just to gain traction. So I felt like they tried, but not as hard. But I feel like at the same time, Upper Deck tried a little harder because they had to. They had to be more competitive. You had things like National Hockey Card Day became a thing in the United States because Upper Deck said, oh, whoa, okay, we got to do something to make us look like the brand of hockey cards and not just a brand of hockey cards. So yeah, obviously competition breeds innovation.
Yeah, no doubt.
Time for a quick break, but we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Isaac Alpert, a longtime card collector and the co-founder of the Penny Sleever. My wife and I started the Penny Sleever with a simple premise in mind: to offer collectors top quality supplies at fair prices. We offer a full range of hobby supplies and we'll get them to you fast. Whether you're looking for a 260-point magnetic for that oversized patch card, or a slew of semi-rigids for your next PSA submission, the Penny Sleever has you covered. Shop now at thepennysleever.com and use the promo code SCNation to get 10% off your first order. That's SCNation for 10% off at thepennysleever.com. The Penny Sleever. Top quality supplies. Fair prices.
Iron Sports Cards is your #1 source for all your PSA and other grading submissions. Their elite status improves turnaround times. Heck, they even provide the card savers. Their chat rooms provide updates on all your submissions. They also offer wax options and single cards to cover all the bases. Check them out on Facebook at Iron Sports Cards Group or on the web at ironsportscards.com, or even give them a call at 1-877-IRON-PSA. Rob's got you covered.
Sports Card Nation has returned.
Going back to the Donruss, and I still, it's funny how you mentioned the Donruss. I still have some unopened packs here of Donruss hockey. I think they're 96, the ones I have. Why, I'll speculate. I'm assuming there wasn't a Series 2 because maybe sales of Series 1 weren't up to their expectations, or was there other things at play? Do you know the reason that they didn't produce a following Series 2, like you said, to catch some of those late call-ups and signings and things like that?
I don't know. They just didn't for some reason. I mean, I know that like with Score, here's like another example, like 10-11 Score. And they kind of revised the design from 90-91 Score. And so they're like, oh, okay, we're pushing this nostalgia thing. Our cards from 2011 or 2010 look like the cards from 1990. Okay, that's all great. They promised you 1 rookie redemption per box. And then I bought 5 boxes. And then I didn't get any rookie redemptions. And then I emailed their customer service and they said, oh, no, we're actually just putting the rookies that were going to be redemption rookies actually just went into the boxes. So then I double checked and I saw that 1 card out of the 5 boxes was one of those so-called rookie redemptions that I just didn't notice at the time because it looked like the other rookie cards. And I said, okay, when were you going to tell us this? Like, I bought 5 boxes. Like, I'm all in on this. Like,
that, and where's my other 4?
Right. It just felt very bait and switch, right? Because, I mean, if you think about it, there were supposed to be 10 update rookies. It ended up being 9, but there were supposed to be 10. So I thought, all right, I'll buy 5 boxes because it's a massive set, like 500 base cards, maybe 100 short prints, if I remember correctly. I'm thinking back now, fears, right? And I was disappointed. I just felt it was very bait and switch, right? Like they kept changing their ideas. And then like another thing that they did that was cool was they did an update set. for 10-11 score box set. All right, rookie and traded. All right, cool. 1 in every 20 sets had an exclusive card of a fictional hockey player named Taro Sugimoto. You've heard of this card, or you've heard of the legend? Okay, yeah. So those who don't know, the Sabres in like the 1974 draft, they got so bored, they trolled the NHL and they said, you know what? We're drafting Taro Sugimoto from the Tokyo Katanas. And the NHL actually like put that down as like, okay, that's their pick. That appeared in like the guide and record book that they drafted this Taro Sugimoto. And then later on, like that fall, they're just like, oh yeah, no, we just made that guy up. We didn't have anybody to draft and we were trolling, right? Because this is back when NHL teams would actually phone in their draft picks, right? You know, they would call up and say. So Score made a Taro Sugimoto card, which was awesome. And you're like, yes, okay, like you really have to be a hockey fan to get this or to want it. But then what they did was they put it one in every 20 boxed sets of Score rookie and traded, which I thought was just kind of like a big middle finger. Like, yeah, well, maybe the set will have this card and maybe it won't, right? And then, of course, that drove up the demand for a card that totally shouldn't have had any sort of demand.
Yeah, so they had the right idea, and then they took the wrong approach. And it's much like a baseball story with the Mets fictional player of Sid Finch back in the day. For those that remember that kind of planted story, throw 104 miles an hour, and just this incredible prodigy. And he obviously was made up and not real, but people believed it and ran with it, and it's a legend to this day. I don't know if you're familiar with that one. That one's from the baseball side, but he didn't get drafted. They made a press release as if they signed him, like he slipped through the cracks, and we found this guy and we signed him. That sort of, so it's reminiscent of that. Fanatics, like I mentioned, Sal, is really trying to get their hands in every till. I mean, do you like the status quo where we have Upper Deck pretty much exclusively making hockey cards, or would you be open, well, at this point, if Fanatics got the license, that would mean Upper Deck would probably be out. Do you like where it is now, or is that something you'd like to see at some point, or no?
I have a mixed opinion. So hockey cards are kind of like the only child for Upper, right? And Fanatics already has 3 kids, 4 if you count soccer, 5 if you count Star Wars, which probably is probably the biggest kid. I mean, well, I don't know. I mean, baseball is huge, but so is Star Wars, right? And Disney, right? So Fanatics already has a lot of, I mean, what are they going to do for hockey like that Upper Deck wouldn't do better? I don't know, right? Kind of a rhetorical question, but it's like Upper Deck, they lost the Marvel license. They got the DC license. Okay, then they have like I don't know, like women's volleyball or something. I mean, they just have they're trying to expand into a lot of other sports that Fanatics isn't looking into. But it's like, if Upper Deck keeps hockey, they're going to keep doing the job that they're doing. And I think they're doing a pretty good job. On the other hand, if Topps and Fanatics got hockey, then we could start seeing some of these old iconic designs again used on hockey cards. I think it's funny that they'll use a hockey design on a Throwback Thursday baseball card, this being Topps, or even they use the 7980 Topps design on some Star Wars cards for their Throwback Thursday set. And I kind of fell for it. I said, oh, those look like the Gretzky rookie year. Okay, sure. I'll buy a Mandalorian card and a Baby Yoda card and whatever else, Obi-Wan Kenobi, whoever, right? I think there would definitely be a lot of great nostalgia and a lot of just great stuff if Topps got the license, because then we could start seeing some of those old designs again. I mean, imagine if they made a set of retired players using a classic design, or if they did an all-time greats, but they used the 91 Topps Stadium Club hockey design, right? I mean, that would be so cool. Right. But then at the same time, we would lose a lot of the stuff that Upper Deck's been doing. And Upper Deck's had the hockey license for over 30 years now. So, I mean, there is something cool about that continuity of 34 years of Upper Deck hockey cards, right? I don't have all the sets from the past 34 years, most of them, especially anything without. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, mixed emotions, good on both good on both fronts.
I'll play I'll shoot right in the middle of that. And this is more pipe dreaming, Sal, than reality. I like to see. I don't want to, like you said, I don't want Upper Deck to lose that license, because I think they've done overall a pretty decent job and great designs. But I also like to see, for the reasons you just said, right, some of those finest hockey again, and some of those, chrome hockey they could do if they ever got a licensing. So I'd like to see both of those companies produce hockey cards. I don't think, at least right now in the current landscape and terrain, I think those days are probably in the rearview mirror. But I'd love to see both of those companies, do it, rather than Upper Deck lose their license and then it go to Fanatics way. So that's kind of, I know that's sort of the easy cop-out answer, probably not realistic, but I'd love to see that. If anything changes, that's the way I'd like it to change. But like you said, I think if it's one or the other, I don't think Upper Deck's done a bad enough job, let's say, to lose the licensing in other ways where companies have had problems before, like me. So, that's kind of where I fall on that subject. Let's talk a little bit about the players too. You got a superstar in the making right in your backyard in Connor Bedard. You got Connor McDavid, probably one of the best players in the game in Edmonton. Almost won his first cup last year. I don't know what it is with guys named Connor, but two great guys. You got Ovechkin, who I know's hurt right now, approaching a points record. That would probably, I don't know about you, I didn't ever think that would even be approachable, and yet here we are talking about it. I think hockey's in a strong position. I think it's gained some player. I'll let you speak to that as a seller. I think it's gained some popular, card wise too, hobby wise here in the States. Obviously in Canada and overseas, it's pretty strong to begin with. Kind of your thoughts on where, the state of the game on the ice and off the ice.
Well, hockey cards, it's funny because there's always going to be people who buy them. There's always going to be the fans. Last season, it really got a shot in the arm with Connor Bedard. So, it seems like every time there's a generational talent going from 1990 forward anyway, that really kind of adds some fuel to hockey cards fire, right? Like with 1990 and Eric Lindros, right? And everybody wanted his score rookie card that said future superstar. He hadn't even been drafted yet.
Not to cut you off, so they even put, I lived through the Lindros, the craze. They put him in a baseball traded set. He was taking, as you probably well know, taking batting practice with the Blue Jays. They made a baseball card out of Eric Lindros and put it into the score traded set of baseball. And I'm not even talking the hockey one. So
yeah, they hyped him every way they could. In baseball, put him in all the traded sets, even if he wasn't, like, even in the 92 traded, I think he had a card in that set. He had his own box set in 92, 93 called Road to the NHL. So, he was like super hyped. And then you didn't really see this again until Crosby in 05, right? And then you saw it again with McDavid in 2015. But I think the difference with Connor Bedard is that this is, social media is a lot stronger now than it was 10 years ago. It always gets stronger in good ways and bad ways, but it's more prevalent. And then the other thing is that it's post-pandemic, right? And so that's when a lot of other people really started seeing cards as investments. I think all card collectors did. Oh, we bought this card for $1. We sold it for 10. Yay. Or, oh, I bought this card for $50 and now it's $500. Yay. You know what I mean? And that's fine. But this is where it really kind of exploded, where you had people coming in from the outside, and then you talk about like those sneakerheads, right? Like the people who buy the Air Jordan shoes on day of release, wait a week, and then sell them for 5 times what they paid for them, right? That kind of short-term flipper culture, right? And so, you saw it you were at the 2021 National, right? Were you set up there?
Yep.
Okay. So you
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
ahead.
You saw what it was like. That was the first National that I sold. People were buying Connor McDavid cards from me and they didn't even know hockey. They just wanted Connor, that they just knew that he was a great player. So they're just like, oh my God, this guy's a great player. I need his cards. And everything that I had of his pretty much sold that over the course of 5 days. With Connor Bedard going to a major team like the Blackhawks, major meaning like an original six, third largest city in the United States, therefore third largest city in North America, right? So major market, original six team that's, about 10 years removed from its last championship. But there was a lot of hype for him last summer, even though there weren't really many cards out there. So anything with him in Team Canada was selling, right? And then in the fall, even though there was no Young Gun, his Tops Now stickers were selling, and his Team Canada stuff last fall, I mean. This year it's definitely cooled off. But last year was such a huge year for hockey, and now it's kind of like a little bit of a down, right? Where it's just like, the people who collect still collect, but now I'm not really competing with the people who are trying to get his cards. Like, I don't think Macklin Celebrini being on the Sharks and then also getting injured after like his first game is going to really drive that demand for Upper Deck Series 1 or Series 2, I should say, because he's going to be in Series 2, the same way it drove the demand for Upper Deck Series 2 last year.
Yeah, and so now I the sort of paraphrase where you get more of the purists, right? The true collectors who are going to just be hockey collectors regardless of how strong the rookie class is or isn't. But it's also nice. I mean, as a dealer and as a seller, I mean, I'm sure it's nice too when you have that kind of transcendent, at least, predicted transcendent player like a Bedard or McDavid. Speaking of my team, Lafreniere was playing a little bit better, but he hasn't lived up to, the number one pick billing yet, but I think he's moving in the right direction. But it's always nice when there's a rookie class or a rookie, even one person in the case of like Bedard and McDavid that can sort of bring attention to the sport. And, some of those people, like you mentioned, Sal, who came in, maybe, hey, I want a McDavid card, I want a Bedard card. Maybe not all of them, but hopefully some of them stuck around too for the long haul. Like, hey, I like collecting hockey cards. So hopefully that's, sort of a benefit of sort of that buzz and craze and hype and that they stick around and not get out, when the getting out is good. So, and I know that happens, and that happens in other sports as well. So, you mentioned the National and setting up there. I've been to, I think 5 or 6 now. I'm starting to count. I've never set up. I'll do a couple stage, shows, and then I'll walk around and obviously buy some cards, talk to folks, and it's a great week, as you well know. It's under new leadership, starting with last year's, in Cleveland. Are you someone who sets up there and obviously attends the National? Are you, do you like where the direction the new leadership is going? I know it's early yet, and it may, it might be too early to fully judge, but do you like what you saw starting with last year?
Honestly, I didn't really see much of a difference. I mean, I think that the differences that I saw were the differences in the venues between Donald E. Stevens Convention Center in Rosemont, which is a suburb of Chicago, versus where it was at in Cleveland last year, or even the Convention Center in Atlantic City 2 years back. So I didn't really see much of a difference. But then again, maybe the difference was more intended for the customers, the people who are there to shop and buy cards and get autographs. And so I wasn't really doing that. So I didn't really get a chance to experience those differences. I think just from a dealer standpoint, it seemed more or less the same, just in a smaller venue. It was funny, getting off topic here, but it was funny just how hard it was to get to and from the convention center. I had friends drive in, and they talked about how it took them what should have been a 15-minute drive took them an hour. Like, Clemente Lisi, of course.
Yeah.
And Clemente was talking about how he was trying to get the shuttle back to his hotel, and it was like he waited for like over an hour, and then finally he he took the first shuttle. They're like, "Are you at this hotel?" He's like, "Yes, I am." And he just got on that just to get the heck out of the
take me anywhere, but I got to get out of here.
Away from the Expo Center, right? And then it was funny because then he's like, and then after that, he's like, I was just able to walk over to my hotel or get like a $5 Uber ride from one hotel to another versus coming into the convention center, which was just mess. So yeah, as far as like the changes, I haven't really seen it yet. I know next year they're expanding it. They're going to add another room of dealers upstairs at the Donald E. Stevens Convention Center. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, it's good to let in more people. I think it's a bad thing to say like, oh, and there's more dealers upstairs, because I feel like at any show, whenever you put more dealers in another room, those dealers are always overlooked. You know what I mean? Oh, be sure to also, everyone's in the gymnasium, but then we've also set up some tables in the bathroom. Please be sure to visit the bathroom. The dealer's in there too, on your way, out of your stall, and, wash your hands first. And then, be sure to check out what they have for sale. I always kind of found it to be nice.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think it's just that insatiable demand. There's people want to set up, and they're trying to not turn. I mean, people are going to get turned away and not get a table, and they're trying to like make that number as small as they can. But I also, like you said, I think you've got to be respectful to the existing dealers who supported the show from in recent years or even longer. And you got to, like you said, you got to keep the new dealers in mind. Like, is this going to be a positive situation for them too, or are they going to be, like you kind of mentioned, maybe an afterthought? So hopefully that doesn't muddy up the waters and ruin what a show I love and try to attend every year. Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I had having it with Sal Berry. And if that's the case, good news. Part 2 next Friday. So this was part 1. Part 2 next Friday, and we're going to talk some more hockey, talk some more hobby. And that's the thing with Sal. He knows a lot of hockey, but he knows a lot of hobby too. And really, we didn't even get to everything that I wanted to. So we'll also have him back. But he'll be back next week, so don't miss that.
Time for our Hobby is the People Announcer of the Week.
This is Ray from Philly, and remember, the hobby is the people.
If you'd like to be the Hobby is the People Announcer of the Week, do a WAV or MP3 file and send it to sportscardnationpc@gmail.com.
For nearly 50 years, Sports Collectors Digest has been the voice of the hobby, bringing you comprehensive coverage of the sports collectible industry. From industry news, auction results, market analysis, and in-depth stories about collectors and their collections, Sports Collectors Digest has everything you need to know about the hobby. SCD is also your leading source for listings of sports collectible dealers, card shops, card shows, and the latest from the industry's top companies. To check out all the latest news or to subscribe to the hobby's oldest magazine, visit sportscollectorsdigest.com or call 1-800-829-5561.
Hobby Hotline is the hobby's only live interactive call-in show. Join some of your favorite hobby personalities every Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, to discuss the hottest hobby topics. If you miss us live, catch us after the fact on all major podcast platforms. Follow us on socials at Hobby Hotline.